Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Honest Concepts Podcast. My name is Sensei Bronson Long. This is my instructor, Master Roger.
How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm doing great.
Good. I'm so glad to hear it. It has been raining for 5 days.
It has. The sun just came out
Yes,
today.
sir. I hope it stays out. It's just been so wet and dreary for so many days. Which is so funny is that goes along with our topic tonight in a lot of ways.
Exactly.
So every week we come onto the show Tuesday at 7:30 Eastern time, and we do different topics every week. 1 week is my turn, the next week is your turn. And this is such a great show. I really enjoy doing this with you, sir. I've been your martial arts student for quite some time, and I get the opportunity to sit down here with you and do this together.
Actually, I've enjoyed it more
Me
than
too.
you know. It's just been a fun.
Me too.
It really has.
I look forward to it
Yes,
every
sir.
single Tuesday. So you texted me the other day with your idea for a topic.
Right.
And I thought it was so good. It sounded so like you. It's just such a great thing. Because, this show's so much more than just our walk through martial arts, but more importantly, our walk through life. you
Right.
know? And the topic that you chose for today was pulling the weeds from our lives.
Right.
And
The first thing I thought of, too, excuse me, is I was like, what's Sensei Long going to come up with? And I'm thinking, what pool Mike's going to come up with? Or Ben. Go
that's so
ahead.
great. I love that, actually. That's, I can say there's so many things that I love about the show. It's hard for me to pick a favorite, but I enjoyed last week in particular. We had quite a bit of fun.
We did.
Talking with the live chat and
Yeah,
just
it was
going
cool.
back and forth. It's
Yes, sir.
so cool. So cool. So we were talking before we went live just now, and we decided I'd go first on this one.
All right.
So when you sent me pulling the weeds from your life,
What was your first thought?
first I was very generic. Very generic, and so I refined it.
Right.
My thought was, well, the weeds can be a metaphor for bad things in your life, and so
Right.
you got to pull them up and all that good stuff. And the more I thought about it, the more I actually really enjoy the idea of it, because, or at least, the metaphor of it is what I really like about it, because I've been doing a lot of gardening this year. I started last year, and I did okay for myself last year. This year, my wife and I really went gung-ho on it. We've enjoyed ourselves. It's something I've seen you and your wife do. Just when you put flowers around your house and
Right.
stuff. I've come over here before and just been like, I just like this. I
Yeah.
like the way this looks and it feels nice. And so this year I said, I'm going to do it too. So I did a little border around this deck we've got at the house, and put some dirt down, some flowers and stuff. And, it's funny. Where we live, we're in North Carolina. We got a lot of clay here.
Yes.
It's not like the greatest soil in the world.
Absolutely.
You can do something with it if you put some real work into it, but it's no Garden of Eden. It's a lot of clay.
Not at all.
So what my wife and I did, we have a lot of gravel where we live, a lot of rocks. So we got a lot of dirt, brought into the house, and so here I am thinking, man, this is, really nice dirt. No matter what I throw in there, it's going to grow, and everything's going to do just fine. And it did. But what shocked me, I'd never done any gardening before. All the weeds. It's like, where did they come from?
Right.
How did they get here?
Right.
And so what I thought about today, the day that you sent me the text about what your idea for tonight's topic was going to be, it really dawned upon me that our life is no different. Nothing is ever perfect for good, during this life at least.
Right.
All good things come to an end.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter how good the soil is, how good your foundation is, it helps. But there's nothing that I've ever found in this world that ever really stops the weeds from coming back. They find a way every year,
Not
every
even weed
season.
stop.
Exactly. And temporary changes are good. You can pull them up and do a good job, and that's all great and dandy. But it's a constant effort every year that we have to pull the weeds up out of the ground. And to me, it's kind of a simile to our own life, that we are constantly working on ourselves. You say it yourself all the time concerning martial arts, is that even now, after all the experience that you've gotten, the ranks that you've achieved, the students you've taught, you still consider yourself a student in life.
Sure.
You never stop growing. You still have never stopped working on your own technique and who you are as a martial artist. And that really flows over into who we are as people, that the weeds will always come back. We always continue to have to working on ourselves, continue to pulling those weeds out of our life and refining that soil, polishing our character, becoming a better person every day.
Sure.
That's where I took it.
To to me, sorry guys, to me it's like the first thing is you have to identify the weed. You know, and I'm talking about people in your life. Right? That's the direction I'm going to go first. The people in your life, you know, people that cause you stress or they're negative or they get you kind of like a stronghold on you, you know, and it can be family members. And then they start taking away your confidence. So we have to pull that weed and sometimes get rid of these people in our life. And this is one of the hardest things when I was young. I think a lot of people when they're young, they don't understand it. But, you know, I mean, I don't go out with certain people, me and Ms. Autry. If they want to hoot and holler and carry on, as we call it down south, let them do it. They're going to do it without me. You know, it's not that I'm better than them. It's just I don't want to be around it.
Right.
You know, and through the life that I've pulled weeds and I've eliminated people in our life, I don't go up to them and say, I don't want you in my life anymore. I don't do that mean or hateful. I do it slowly. Some of the worst weeds, if you pull a weed real fast, you don't get the root out. It'll break.
True.
If you reach down and pull it real slow and pull it straight up, most of the time the weed comes out with the root. That's the same thing with people. If I didn't want to be around somebody, or maybe he's going down a path that I don't want to be down, even before I got married or after I got married, we don't want to be around those people, we slowly back down. That way they don't miss you as much. They'll call you up and say, well, you haven't talked to you in 2 weeks. Where you been?
Right.
So that's what I was thinking about more. The first thing I thought about. It's hard. And I told you a long time ago, excuse me, Billy Graham is my favorite pastor and preacher. I mean, I know he's passed away and I watch a lot of his videos and stuff, recordings. And they were talking about, you know, just because you make a decision and you feel bad about it, it doesn't mean it was the wrong decision. You know, I've cut people out of the life before that I just didn't want part of. You know, they were either, you know, selfish or greedy or put bad thoughts in your mind, you know, and that was a character for them. And I didn't want to do that. And you catch yourself starting to be like them a little bit if you're not careful. So even though you make a decision and you feel bad about it, it's not always the wrong decision. We've talked about that. That's kind of the direction I was going.
I love that, actually. You know, I love that. It's so funny.
And it hurts to do that.
Oh, it hurts.
It hurts bad.
Yeah, it sure does.
I've done family members that way.
Right.
You know, and you know, like I said, I don't be a confession, but it's hard. You know, but there are certain things that I don't want to be around.
Right.
You know.
No, I understand that completely. And you know, a brief statement on that is that it's nothing judgmental. There's nothing hateful for it. It's just standards.
Exactly.
There's a way that you want to live your life, and that just has certain qualifications to it, and others disqualify themselves from being a part of that based upon your own standards. I don't think there's any wrong in that at all. You know, so everybody has a choice whether they want to uphold to yours or their own or what their standards are. Sometimes they just don't align. Yeah. Just, you know, life, I guess. But
have you had to do this? Like cut somebody out of your life, or ask them, or just kind of pull that weed?
Oh, geez, yeah. And I had to learn how to pull weeds. I was burning them for a long time. You're out of my life. You're never coming back.
You're out. You can stay, but you're out.
Yeah, I had to learn how to do it slowly and gracefully. It's so funny you say that. Yeah, I sure have. And it's not always an easy thing. No. You know, I'd tell a story. I won't say any names or anything, but, you know, I had a buddy of mine. We were probably around maybe 11 and 12 when we first met. And we stayed on and off friends and buddies for, 12, 13, 14 years, you know, up until our mid-20s or so.
Sure.
And he was always on the wrong path, you know. And as I got older, you know, thank you and Mrs. Autry and God, and I started to steer away from all that. Right. But you still love those people. You have so many good memories with them, so many laughs and late nights and having a good time, you know. You just have good memories with those people. It's hard to cut them off. And, of course, as you grow, they do too. And so it kind of seems like they're getting better. It kind of seems like they're getting more responsible too, you know. They're getting full-time jobs and stuff, but they don't necessarily get off the bad path. And eventually, you know, I had to stop talking to the guy. It just got too dangerous. It just got too bad. And
how'd you do it? I mean, you just stopped talking to him, or?
Yeah, well, it was a standard thing. It was, I'm not going to do this, and he really wanted to. And I said, well, no, that's fine. You know, you do what you want to do, but this is, you know, the way I'm living my life now. I can't. Right. It's not that I won't. It's that I can't. There is no. It's not on the table. There's no option there. And we had a little disagreement about it, but it's not like we were real bad argument or anything. It's just a little disagreement. He was, a nice guy, really. And about 2 months later, he's in prison. It's just so funny how that works sometimes. I've seen it happen many times in my life. So, and to answer your question, I've done that a handful of times.
This is why, we see young people, or police officers will see them, or judges, or counselors, whoever. They see these young kids hanging out with the wrong people. It's like, get away from these kids.
Yes.
And you can't tell them. They'll be fine. You cannot tell them not hang around these people.
We just don't listen.
No.
That's all it is.
You don't.
Right.
And like I say, I've heard a couple sermons and the preachers talk about, God will put somebody in your life sometimes for just a short while and then bring them out,
right.
and take them away for you. And he does that just for you, for a reason.
You're right.
We don't know what the reason is. I mean, we might think we know. It might be kind of good,
right.
But we're not really convinced on why or how. But I've had people come in my life for maybe 2 or 3 weeks and they did something special. Like, wow, I didn't know this, or they taught me something. Then I didn't see them again.
Right.
And that's what it was.
You just never forget those people.
You don't.
It's so funny. Actually, I'm really glad you said that. It's kind of coincides with the first thing you opened up your topic with, was you said we have to identify the weed.
Right.
And it's hard to do that in the beginning. It really is in life. And one of my favorite books in the Bible is Proverbs, and there's a great verse in there that says, if you train a child up in the way, he will not depart from thereof.
Right.
And we don't listen when we're kids, but as we get older, some of the things we hear start to come back to us. Like, oh, wow, they were right. They were right all along. They were so right. But to continue the analogy with the weed, the metaphor, when I first started gardening, I grew everything from seed. And so I put seed in the ground, and I didn't know what a sapling looked like. I didn't know. I didn't know they all came up with one type of leaf, and as the plant matures, different type of leaves show up. I didn't know that.
Right.
And I started having concerns. I was like, I don't know what's a weed and what I put down. I don't know what's wrong, what's bad, and what's good. And it's just like that when you're young. And even now, sometimes in life, some people are really deceptive. Some people are, what's the term? Wolf in sheep's clothing.
Absolutely.
It gets hard to tell. You have to identify that weed, and it's not always easy. But that's where the guidance comes in. You have someone like you in your life, or someone there to help you out and say, that's a weed. You don't eat that. That's not good for you.
Right. Had a gentleman come in one day. He was actually, I don't know if you were at the school that time or not. It seemed like you were. Maybe you wasn't. I don't know. Anyway, he came in. He was from another martial arts school. Big guy. He had a little bit of experience. I don't know, brown belt, maybe. I don't know. I don't think he was a black belt. But anyway, we were partnering up. Mm-hmm. And he took a white belt down in the corner. He was showing him all the stuff that we don't do, different kind of system. So I looked at him. I didn't say anything to him. He'd only been there like 2 times. And we all lined up, always do a little talk, guys, if you work on technique, whatever. I said, guys, just to let you know something. I said, at this school, if you're new, so you'll know, and I'm going to make something perfectly clear, do not show any of the techniques to any of my students. And that's what I call them, my students. I had to make a point. My students, they learn from us, not you and your system. I said, this just won't be allowed here.
Right.
So, right to what I say with, he came up to me, this guy did. He'd only been there 2 classes, right, Ms. Archer? 2 or 3 classes. He came up to me and said, you called me out. I said, what do you mean I called you out? He said, you called me out in front of everybody. I said, well, first of all, I didn't call you a name. If I called you out, you would have known it.
Sure.
I'm not scared to call you out. I said, I just want everybody to understand. People that are dishing it out, people that are receiving it, that we don't do it in the school. I said, you were working out with a white belt, showing him stuff that could probably hurt him. That technique you were showing him could hurt him. He said, well, I think I'm done here and won't come back. I said, well, that's your choice.
Sure.
So I pulled that weed pretty quick.
Good for you.
But sometimes you have to pull a weed like that.
Right.
And sometimes you can let it linger a little bit,
Yeah, well, you could have helped that white belt out,
Yeah, right.
Some people,
Were you there?
I don't think I was there. I don't necessarily remember that. Maybe, but I don't think I remember that. But you could have helped that person out for sure. So some things you're not supposed to see in the beginning because you can get hurt.
Right.
There's certain responses and things you have to learn over time.
Sure.
Otherwise, you can get some real damage. Yeah. And it's not like we're in there no offense to anybody, we're not playing violin. You know what I mean? We're practicing. Yes, sir. We're practicing hurting each other.
Play the flute.
So we have to also practice how to be hurt correctly.
Right.
You know, not really receive too much injury. So.
Yeah. But sometimes you have to pull the weed instantly.
You're right.
You have to take care of stuff.
You're very, very right.
You don't want to. You don't like doing it, but sometimes you have to. You know.
You're right.
But yeah, I mean, it's just. But that's what I was thinking of.
It's so true. See, I haven't had the problem this year that I had last year with the garden, because now I have a little more experience on what a sapling looks like and what a weed looks like. And you know, this year I pull the weeds very early. As soon as I see them and find them, I can pull them out. If you wait long enough, if that weed grows up with the fruit or the vegetable, whatever you're growing, and they both start to get root, it's really scary to pull that weed sometimes. So if you pull it, you can pull the root of what you're trying to grow. You end up damaging both things.
I'm going to tell you how I came up with this idea.
Really?
I told Ms. Alter, I said, it's my turn this week. She said, what are you going to talk about? I said, I don't know. I said, I might just talk about funny stories. Let's just talk about funny stories, no topic. I said, then I thought about the story. I was, I think I was like 12, 13 years old, summertime. My mom had beautiful flowers, gorgeous flowers. I mean, just wonderful.
Yes, sir.
So my dad came to me that night. We were at the dinner table. He said, tomorrow you can pull weeds with your mom and your two sisters. I said, Dad, I got a basket. He said, you going to pull weeds? I said, yes, sir. And he don't talk back. So the next morning, my mom had these beautiful irises, just gorgeous flowers, and had weeds all in it. I'm 13 years old. Man, I had to be at basketball. I could play basketball within 10 minutes. Another neighbor was coming in. We were going to challenge them. It was going to be, big time. So my two sisters were sitting there, and I said, I'm not going to pull weeds. They said, well, you got to pull weeds today. I said, I bet I don't. They said, I bet you do. I said, okay. So I'm out there for like 5 minutes. I'm thinking, what can I do? So my mom had these beautiful flowers. So I reached out, and I just, true story, I grabbed a flower, and I pulled it up. I said, look at this weed. My mom says, oh, my gosh, honey, that's not a weed. That's one of my prettiest flowers. I said, well, I don't know the difference. She said, you need to go play basketball. I said, that might be best. So I waited on my sisters. They didn't talk to me for a week. True story. That's my weed story.
That's hilarious.
True story. I got my bicycle. I just waited. My sisters were out there. Yeah, that's 5 hours.
I don't know the difference.
That's what I told them. I lied to my mom.
That is so funny. Oh my God, it's too funny. That's a great story. Pool Mike comes in. He says, who's on board tonight? Pool Mike here. Jenny Easter says that she is present. Mr. Ben says hello.
Hey, Ben.
Miss Lisa Hunter, so glad to see you. I hope you're having a great day.
Hey, Miss Lisa.
She says, great topic. Michael says, or is it Michael? It's Pool Mike. Pool Mike says, no rain, no rainbows, no weeds, no grass. Weeds make us appreciate the flowers. You're very, very true. That is very, very true. Once you cut those weeds back, all of a sudden those flowers start looking real pretty. Yes, sir. So
thank you, Ms. Autry.
I'll read that for you one more time. He says, no, you're fine.
Distracted.
Pool Mike says, no rain, no rainbows, no weeds, no grass. Weeds make us appreciate the flowers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
It really does. It's so funny. When you get done pulling the weeds, things just start looking so much sharper. And just your house looks so much better. It's crazy what, you get to appreciate it once it's gone. You're 100% right, Pool Mike. Jenny Easter says, everyone comes in your life for a reason.
Absolutely.
It is all what you do with it that matters.
Spot on again.
Mm-hmm.
She's 3 for 3, isn't she?
Spot on for sure. Miss Hunter says, I had to walk always from what I thought were 2-year dear... Oh, wow. I had to walk a ways from what I thought were 2 very dear friends for 20 plus years. They were no longer fit in the garden. My garden is now flourishing. Wow.
That's deep.
That is deep, and it's so funny. And it is like that sometimes, where you end up having people a part of your life for a long, long time, and maybe there was a time where they did fit.
They probably fit, and a lot of times, we talk about it all the time, jealousy, and they start getting a stronghold on you, and they change the way you think or the way you act.
Right.
And you don't mean to do that way, but you catch yourself doing that. You're like, that's not like me.
Right.
This is not like me, and I guarantee she's a great lady.
Oh,
she is a great lady.
Love that whole family.
Yeah, the whole family's good.
Awesome people.
Yeah.
Yeah, very true. It is like that. And it's so funny, you get, at least, I shouldn't say you, I'll say I for this one. I would get so comfortable being around certain people. Even that buddy of mine said went to prison. I think about him all the time. I miss him. You know what I mean? We had so much fun laughing.
I miss you too.
We had so much fun laughing and joking together. And, But I think really what I do miss is less of him and more of what was or what could have been. And, he really was, to me at least, he was always a nice guy. Never took from me, never hurt me, never lied to me, whatever. He was always a good guy to me.
Right.
And I really feel bad for him in a lot of ways, But it's one of them things where there was a time where he fit right into the garden, to take Miss Lisa's words. He fit right into the garden. And then as things began to change, there wasn't the place for him there anymore.
Well, the way I look at that is, you continue to look like Miss Lisa. She continues to grow down the right path, and this weed continues to grow too.
Right.
And that's what happens. You got to. They just don't go down the same path.
That's right.
And it's sad.
It is.
It's just so sad to see that.
Right.
We've seen it so much in our life. I've had really good friends. You have too. Me and Ms. Altrie's had couples and stuff, and nothing against this, and I'm just telling you honestly. We don't drink alcohol. Some people do. That's fine. You want to drink, but I didn't want to have a martial arts school and drink alcohol and be in some bar, be half drunk, and then my students walk in or the parents walk in with it. It's Master Autry. I'm sitting over there drinking. I just stay away from it. I've never drank any alcohol.
Yes.
For that reason, because I wanted to do it. I don't want that weed.
Right.
I didn't want that weed growing inside me. I'm not saying I'm better than anybody, because I'm not. For me, it's not for me. It's
standard.
Exactly. It's a standard.
Exactly right.
And people get upset when you don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
They think you're better. No, it's just I think that I don't want to do it.
Right.
That's what I think.
I don't know what is easier or what is harder, or if you can really even compare the two. But just thinking about it, I wonder what is more difficult, always having that standard as a constant, or at some point in your life changing your standard. At one point it's acceptable, and then you get to a stage in your life you say, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. I don't know what's harder or what's easier to do.
What do you think, though, if you had to guess?
Well, I know the life I had to live, and I know it was kind of tricky. The birds of a feather flock together.
Oh, absolutely.
And if you spend a long enough period of time with that flock, all that really truly means is that you didn't spend that time with any other flock. And so when you cut out certain things in your life, and it doesn't have to be alcohol or partying or whatever, it can be anything. It could be golf, or you play darts with your buddies and you're cutting it out now. You spend all that time with that group of people. By default, it means you didn't spend that time with any other group of people. And so when you leave that flock, you're like, now where do I go? Who do I hang out with, and what do I do? Whereas, someone like yourself, you had that standard from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And so it's not like you ever had to say goodbye to somebody, You just said, I'm not going to see you at all, know?
Right. But, and like I said, I've lost a lot of friends for that.
Sure.
They think, he thinks he's better. I don't,
Right.
It's just, I don't want to be part of it. It's just like, I've seen people that are, good people, really good people. I knew this lady years and years ago. She didn't take martial arts, but her kids did. Well, she got caught drinking and driving, and she got in a lot of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And I always wonder, you got such great kids and stuff, and you drink and drive, and you got caught, and I think she had a wreck and kind of hurt somebody, but her whole life changed.
Right.
Just because of that weed.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy how it has that effect, and it's like a domino, Those decisions just lead from one place to another. It's hard to, it's hard to really put it into words unless you've experienced that, Yeah. But once it happens, it's impossible to forget it, because you make a decision, and so many consequences come from that decision. It's almost like 5 or 6 times the amount of things you have to do now to get yourself out of that trouble.
Right.
Whether it was some accident, drinking and driving or whatever, you have so many more problems now. It's not just court costs. It's not just funerals or hospital bills. They may take your driver's license from you. You still have to go to work.
Right.
You still have bills to pay.
And the reason I told that story, just what happens if, let's say, we were all, I didn't know that lady that good, but let's just say we were all friends, and I was out drinking with her or whatever, and we were all in the car together, and I was holding the steering wheel while she was doing something about it. I'd been in jail too.
Sure.
So I just stay away from that,
Right.
And that's all it is.
Yeah,
It's just that weed. A weed comes from any direction.
Any direction.
We can blow that weed in from any direction. It's not just people. It's things in our life.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I watch YouTube, and naturally, but I sit there, and sometimes I can start clicking on something. I'm like, wow, that's kind of weird. I start looking at it, I don't need to see that. I mean, nothing X-ray
Sure.
or nothing, but just, a lot of cursing, a lot of bad stuff. I'm like, what am I looking at this for?
Right.
So I click off of it. It's easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to do. And you start listening to it or seeing it and stuff. It's just a weed.
That's how I feel about soda. I can't get away from it. It just can't get away. I do so good with no soda. I'll go weeks at a time without it. I don't have a meal, and while I'm sitting there eating, I'm like, it would really go well with this meal right
Pepsi-Cola
now.
and hot dog.
Oh, it is a weed, and it just
Fritos.
grows. It just grows so quickly. I just can't get away from it. It's so funny how that works. But it really can be anything in your life. It doesn't matter what the subject matter is.
Yeah, I don't want to be people.
Yes, sir.
It can be our own thoughts. It can be, what we do.
Right.
It can be how we act or how we blow a horn at somebody.
Sure.
The other day, somebody wasn't going, so I tapped my horn. I'm like, I should have done that. But, they wouldn't go.
Right.
What do you do? They sit there for an hour and a half. But, you do that sometimes. You're like, golly,
Right.
I let that weed slip in. And, try not to.
Right. Well, that goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning, is that it doesn't matter how great that soil is. It can be a rainy day, a dry day, humid day, it doesn't matter, sunny day. The weeds, like you said, the wind will always blow it in. They will always come out no matter how good the soil is. And I think it's a good idea as people to be, constantly maintaining that. I've seen it in my own garden for sure. If I'm on the weeds every day, yeah, it's a little bit of work every single day.
Right.
But the work that I'm going to have to do in like 3 or 4 days now, because it's been raining like crazy, I'm going to get out there and those weeds are going to be huge. They're going to be all over the place. I haven't had a chance to do anything because it's been muddy out there. If we're not constantly, I just keep saying we because I don't want to feel like I'm preaching to somebody. If I'm not constantly on myself and continually to maintain and making a conscious effort to pull the weeds out of my life, before you know it, you turn around and there's more weeds than there are flowers. And it takes so much work to get rid of them.
Now, let me ask you this. Let's change gears.
Okay.
How much time I got? Let's say a student comes to you, and I'll tell you what happened to me, but a student comes to you, and you see he's got all kind of weeds, and he says, man, my life's just all messed up. What can you do to help me? I've had parents come to me. I've had parents come in my office, me and Miss Ultra in there, sitting there crying in the office. And they're like, I got this problem, I got this problem. I have all these problems.
Wow. Well,
That's hard. I mean, put you on the spot.
No, I actually enjoy that. This is one good thing about this podcast. I get to learn something. I'm worthy.
We don't know the answer.
So, as an instructor,
As an instructor,
I personally, it's impossible for me to reach inside and pull the weeds out of somebody else's heart.
right?
I would love to.
Because first of all, they're not going to tell you the truth.
Sure.
They're going to tell you half of it.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't do
We
it.
get half a weed out.
Yeah, no root. So all I can do is help give you a place where you can feel comfortable to accept that you've got weeds, like we all do. And then to motivate, but not just motivate, to do my best to inspire you and to get you in a place where you want to clean that stuff up. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, at least what I've noticed in my short 28 years of life, is that a lot of people know what's wrong. They know it. It's just they either don't know how to address it, or they look at it and go, wow, that's a lot of work, and it just gets so overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when you have a big job like that that's so overwhelming, it just feels a little bit better if there's somebody with you to walk with you through that process. I personally can't pull the weeds for you. I really wish I could. I'd get on my hands and knees and do it now.
Right.
But the very least that I could do, and the most that I want to do as your instructor, is I would love to be there with you and walk with you as we clean up this mess. Because that's what happened to me in martial arts. It helped me clean up a lot of stuff and helped me get the proper direction.
I had this lady come in one day. Gosh, this was 35 years ago, I guess. Maybe not quite that long. But anyway, she said, she says, I got all these problems. I mean, I've got this problem. And she just going, I'm like, golly, you'll get this. That's what you get looking forward to. Yeah, techniques are easy compared to this. She said, I don't know what to do. She said, everybody's coming from all angles and this and that. And she just started listing all this stuff. I said, well, just stop right there. Let me ask you just one question. Just one question. Right now, if you could change one thing, just one thing, what would you change? She said, well, I would change this and that. I said, do it. Mm-hmm. Just do it.
Right.
That's one of the less things you have to worry about. You know, it's like trying to eat an elephant. You have to do it one bite at a time, what they say. But she was just coming in. That's what happens. I mean, when you start pulling weeds in the garden, what do? You pull one weed at a time.
Mm-hmm.
You don't pull 20. You look at it and you go, oh, man. You pull 1, 2, you get that little section, the section over here. And that's what I told her. That's before I even knew about the weed stuff. That's why I had any knowledge at all.
That's so funny.
But I did. I told her, I said, if you could change anything, what would you change? She said, and she told me that one thing. I said, well, just do it.
Right.
It's that simple.
Wow. You know what I've noticed too, is that the more I, do this stuff, I've only owned a yard for so many years, right? But once you start, you just start going. You start getting a little, you get a little bit of that stuff cleaned up. You get one little section of those weeds, and you're like, oh, dude, I got to get the rest of this out.
You got, 4 acres?
I do.
4 acres out there. That's a lot of land.
Yes, sir. Well, there's a lot of trees out there, a lot of woods, and so I don't have to do too much with, the majority of it. But I've got a good acre and some changes I need to manage. But, once you start moving, it gets fun. You want it to look good. You want it to do well. And I think, I would assume 99.9% of people out there, you say, hey, would you like to have a better life? I would assume most people be like, yeah, sign me up. You just got to start pulling those weeds and one at a time. And once you start, that snowball just starts rolling and rolling, and it becomes fun. It becomes something that you want to do, to get that stuff cleaned up in your life.
It's the stronghold that you have to really watch out for with the people. That's for me. When people start pulling you down, or the weeds start pulling down your garden or anything.
Right.
When everything gets a stronghold, if you stay up with it, it won't be that bad most of the time.
Very true. Very true. All right, Jenny Easter says, life is fluid. If you live in the past, you hold yourself back from growing, and sometimes the weeds take over. If you pull too many weeds, you feel lost. It's all about balance, which can be hard to find, but once you do, everything goes as it should. I can agree with that too a lot, because there are some places on my property I don't have to manage. The deer will eat it. They'll take care of that. There's just some things I just don't have to do, because it's just woods. So I think she's on to something there. I think it's a very good point.
What was that last part she said, please?
Sure. She said, it's all about balance, which can be hard to find, but once you do, everything goes as it should.
Yeah. A lot of times when you catch yourself by yourself, it's solitude. And when you have solitude, to me, you can do a lot of thinking. I'll tell you some of the greatest times of my life outside of church, or being with my wife, naturally. I used to go to the dojo. I'd sit in there for 3 hours. 3 hours. Just sit there and just think, about this kid or this adult or this, or think about you doing a technique. I would just sit there in solitude. And it was the best time in the world, because I had nothing else on my mind. It's the phone, it's the YouTube, it's the TV, it's the traffic, it's everything. And really, think about it, it's a lot of little weeds if you break it down that way. But sometimes when people leave my life or have left my life, it's that solitude that I was looking for. Not that I want to be around people. I'm not saying that. But sometimes you need it. We live in such a fast-paced world. I had a couple students and instructors years and years and years ago that went their own way. In the first 2 or 3 months, I was like, man, I really miss that. I hate it. But the more I realized that, man, they were just bringing me down. They were causing trouble and not doing the right thing. I didn't want part of it. And I just started feeling better about myself. I did. Because, like I said, they had that stronghold. And that's a dangerous thing.
Very, very
really,
true.
that's why I use that word so much, because it is.
Right.
Solitude sometimes good.
It is.
You can clear your mind.
It is. There's a time and place for everything. And
but that was a great comment.
Yeah, it sure is. I enjoyed, the time that I was able.
How's her sword coming?
Miss Jenny?
Yeah.
Oh, it looks good.
Is it?
Yeah, it looks real good. Yes, sir. I'd like for you to see it sometime. She, the time that I could spend in the dojo, I don't know if this happened to you, but a lot of times I'd fall asleep. I'd be in the school and I'd just be, like you said, no phone, no traffic. And a lot of times I'd have the lights off or something. I'd just sit there and I'd just think and think, or I'd lay down on the mats and just sit there and just think about things, about students.
I've slept 100 hours on the mats.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Oh, you know what? That's so funny, because one day I told you I fell asleep, and I said I woke up a little sore sleeping on those mats. And you're like, sir, take you a focus mitt, put it under your head.
That's what you do.
Oh, it's genius. It was the greatest advice.
Focus mitt under your head, on your feet.
Yeah, so good.
Put a little Kenny G on, you're good to go.
that you're so right. Solitude can be a great thing. There's a time and place for everything. And, what we do on this show is we get together with people. This isn't necessarily a solitude place. And we get to hang out with each other and the people in the chat room, and we can just have really good conversations together.
Speaking of chatting and talking to people, yesterday, Ms. Audrey and I went to this little coffee shop. Young man there was named, Mr. Charlie. How you doing, sir? I'm sorry. Mr. Charlie was there. Nice young man. He was talking to the girl behind the counter. He wants to do his own coffee. He wants to start doing his own blend and roasting coffee and all. And so when he walked outside, I kind of walked out there. I said, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" He said, "Yeah." I said, funny thing is, I said, "I'm a coffee nut. I love coffee. I drink coffee all the time, just black coffee." He said, "I have a passion for coffee. I love it." And he sounded like me talking about martial arts.
Wow.
He said, "I love the coffee beans," and he's got a, I think, engineering degree or something.
Oh, geez. Big brain.
Yeah, he's a smart guy. Him and Paul might get along just fine.
Take over.
Smart guys. But anyway, we talked for a few minutes, and I said, I might hook you up one day. I might look you up and talk to you. Because we talked about maybe down the road getting our own coffee brand.
Absolutely.
It'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, just a nice guy, so I just want to give him a shout out.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Wow, that's wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, it's so nice to see people doing things like that, chasing dreams. And
I could see you and him, and me and him, and him and him. he had a dream. He's like, "This is what I want to do.
Yes, sir.
I just want to do coffee."
Yes, sir.
I
just have the utmost respect for people who
I do too. I
do
wish
that.
him the best. I really
Regardless
do.
of what it is you're trying to do. If you just want to do well in martial arts, or you want to start your own coffee business, or whatever it is out there that you want to do, if you're really putting your all into it and chasing it, you've got my 100% support. So, sir, with that being said, we went 7 minutes over. It's
there you go.
Past 8 o'clock.
Broke our record.
Yes.
Records are meant to be broken, aren't they?
So, I really enjoyed doing this with you. That was a fun conversation.
It was different tonight.
Yeah, it was kind of different, wasn't it?
It was totally different than we normally do. I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know.
Confession.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But it was good.
Yeah,
it was honest.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what the show is called, the Honest Concepts Podcast. So, sir, I thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us. It's just
my pleasure.
so much fun to do. Take a second to thank all the people who come in there and ask questions or give their own statements and testimonies. And to the lurkers, you don't necessarily have to be talking in the chat to get some appreciation from us.
Sure.
It's always a wonderful thing to do this with you every single week. And we'll be back on next Tuesday at 7:30 Eastern.
Yes, sir.
And it'll be my turn for a topic.
There you go, man. Give it to me Sunday.
I will. Yes, sir. All right. Well, you guys have a great rest of your evening.
Guys, have a good night.